Hello! People on the internet call me abucnasty, or abuc for short. I don't record videos very often, so wish me luck as I try to go and explain this little overview on the space. We're going to try to keep this relatively short, and then maybe make some breakdown videos of each individual planet and the individual things that are there. To start off, this is a 4 million science per minute base. We are running at 60 frames per second, running at 4.4 million. I'll go over the details of why I think it's a 4 million base, not 4.4, and I will explain that. So throughout the video, you will see the FPS dip below 60, as you see like right now. We are hovering constantly right around the 15 to 16 millisecond update mark. So sleep time is pretty much maxed out. I'm running a 7800X3D CPU. So the reason I'm saying that is, and you look at specific things like the core, for example, FPS is going to dip drastically. It has a really hard time for some reason looking specifically at the cargo landing pad, and especially at all the bots that are flying around. So there's a reason I stand here on my little hole on Aquillo, and that's because there's not a lot of renders going on. So this tends to be, if I sit here long enough, don't move my mouse, don't do anything, we sit at 60 FPS. Whether you agree with that metric as being good enough or not, that is up to you. For me, in my mind, this counts because I am not having to move very much. And when I'm in remote view, yes, the FPS will drop. That is what it is. So, without further ado, we're going to start at, let's go to novice. Explain that. So, we have basically, this is the main central area where all the science comes on. I have three philosophies that I have employed when going through creating effectively just the base in general. All the science that is being created is all made on the planets where they originally are unlocked. So, for example, Vulcanus gets metallurgic science, Gleba gets agriculture, and so forth. Novice has all the rest of the sciences except for Promethium. We'll talk about Promethium at the end. The intention of the video is to go through each individual science, show them actually running in real time. And when I talk about a couple things that I wanted to mention, the metric that I'm talking about, this 4 million SPM, this will not happen with research productivity. I have intentionally designed this base to be optimal for running every 7 base science. So that's things like electric weapons damage, running your what was I going to say here? Physical projectile damage, laser weapon damage, and so forth. It runs every 7 bottle or 6 bottle science and 7 bottle science, up to and your 7 bottles basically. So those are the 2 that I have optimized this base for. It has not been optimized for research productivity. The strategy that's employed with research productivity is heavily inspired from SF Hobbit or Superfat Hobbit. He's been inspiration for a lot of the different things that you're going to see. So the ship designs, a couple different things. So definitely heavy inspiration from him. Credit goes to him for a lot of the designs that you're going to see. All the science designs are by myself. So I will cover that. A couple things that I'm going to mention just for shoutouts. Superfat Hobbit designed basically all the freighter ships that you're seeing. These are basically exact copies from him. I've added some random things like little metrics so that I can see percentage symbols and things like that, but otherwise the core processing and everything that was made by him. Everything else that you're going to see throughout this entire video is made by me. We're gonna hop right into it. So novice, there's a couple things that exist here. My strategies have been, everything is, there's no trains really, except for Gleba. Everything is mined directly into their basic science input. So I've decided here that for science, all the science that I'm producing is going to be uncommon. The base rate is 115K SPM that's being generated for all the different sciences. And just looking at the last 10 hours, etc., we're stable at this amount. We're going to decrease this. Basically, we're going to remove that. You'll see as I switch researches, just the transitions, and that there still is a constant consumption across all of them. Everything is uncommon except for space science. That's legendary. That's made on a spaceship. And so let's just start there. That's a fun one. So the first one, this is basically the ship. Again, FPS is going to drop because these arms are very, very expensive to look at. If you zoom a little bit further in, it gets better, etc. So one of the things I'm going to talk about as we're going to start with this, this is effectively going to be making at maximum 45,000 science per minute. It can't sustain that. It can a little bit more closer to 40,000, but it overshoots and just produces on demand and has these little up and down spikes. Little monitor indicators here for how much science is currently on the ship, and then the individual capacities of the other asteroids. So the upcycling is done here. There's little status indicators that describe whether the asteroid upcycler is working, and it gives me a pretty good overview of, hey, this whole entire section, there's 4 sections, this whole section is running. This whole section is running, and it's a pretty easy visual indicator of them all. The fun disco lights here, the green and blue silo lights, that's if uncommon is getting processed, rare is getting processed, or epic is getting processed. These are designed basically so that when they are running, we're going to go ahead and start getting a little bit more into the nitty gritty of things. We're going to be displaying a lot and talking about an active state and whether inserters are active. Pretty much the concept that I have gone with the entire time designing this base is circuits are free. Now, that's not exactly necessarily true, but because circuits themselves are multi-threaded, you get a lot of benefits from leveraging those over just straight inserters and waiting on their active time. What do I mean by active time? So let's go into, I will show that as well. So active state, but there's also a wake up list. So all these little green lines, these green lines are an inserter saying, hey, this thing is requesting me to be enabled. So one of the things that I tend to do is I try to rely on circuits as much as I possibly can to minimize the amount of times that a individual inserter is reading from a belt. That's the most expensive thing, and if you can eliminate that over time, it's a pretty good thing. So let's go through that. Some of the ways that this works is if anything on the belt is considered to be uncommon, then the uncommons are active. Anything is rare, the rares are active. The epics are active, so forth. At this point, when you get to the ultra late game, probably the best way to collect asteroids for processing things like basically the fluid consumption, everything that you're going to need, is just a sushi belt. Just having a single belt that is recycling and processing the materials and using the individual asteroid collectors as storage tanks is pretty good. And just upcycling for, or basically using the asteroid reprocessing to create anything else that you need. So that is definitely a strategy that I'm employing a lot. There is a backup mechanism for if we run drastically low on ice, then we will pull it from this one. We haven't needed that in a while, so I've shut that functionality off, but it is an option where radars will send a signal if they need it, and it would say, hey, I need more ice, and it would happen like that. So that little red indicator means I'm low on ice. And I take that back. We have kept it on. So it will pull it and will when needed. So yeah, this is effectively here. This is making really target is 22.8K per minute or 45K per minute. Realistically, it's only going to make 40, but because of the on and off starting times, you can see here on this trip, it's coming back to novice. Ice is getting pretty low. That's basically your bottleneck. But the entire trip here that's planned is we just go to novice and Vulcanus, and that's it. And the trigger condition is if we are on low battery, and the logic there is effectively you're going to have a sleep timer. Each of these 4 banks that are here, they each have basically a circuit indicator that says, hey, if, you know, all the legendary on this belt, if there are 80 asteroids on the belt as a whole going around, at that point or greater than that is going to trigger the sleep condition. When 4 sleep conditions are active, so that would mean all these 4 lights are pink, At that point, then the ship will completely shut down and it will stop running. We do this to buffer rather the asteroids rather than buffering on science. And that's just for continuous operation. I found that that's a better indicator that the ship is actually actively that the science is being used, rather than just relying on whether or not we happen to fill up, because we'll get pretty close to that. You'll see kind of on these trips here, right? Like we stop producing science. It's not because we run out of asteroids. It's because we trigger a condition where we have enough science. So here we store 500,000 of that science. We get there pretty consistently because we overshoot. But that is just to have it continuously operating and continuously collecting and processing the asteroids and not stopping over novice for any longer than really 2 seconds to just drop everything off. That's basically it. At this point, I did it on every single ship design. You're going to see this little weird circuit condition. Basically, all this is I'd indicate a high and load speed, and I can potentially throttle this if needed. The ship's not throttled, it just runs at 100% speed, but it is a way that you could, in theory, slow things down if the ship, if you want to consume less and be a little bit more efficient. In this case, I care more about speed than anything else. So that's, in a nutshell, this is what I'm doing for producing legendary space science. So let's go back to novice. So I've mentioned that we're using uncommon science. Well, how do we do that? You're going to notice something here. We're running at a extremely high mining productivity level. Do you need 8,000 to run this setup? No, absolutely not. You can run this at 1,000 mining productivity. The reason that I've been continuously increasing this value, I'll jump right into the details of that, are these little designs that we're going to see here. So right now, let's see, we're running worker robot speed. So let's go look at, let's go look at chemical science. So for chemical science here, this is kind of our setup. We're running everything on belts. Every single thing is going to be done this way. So let's go over to the slightly more consumed version. You're going to see this setup pretty much on everything. This is, in a nutshell, this is going to be a ore upcycler. The way that these work is it's going to take into it, it's going to have there's no speed modules, and so it's going to utilize the maximum of the quality modules that it's going to have, so about 24.8%. So that means that you have about 25% chance that every single time that you mine something that you're going to get an uncommon ore. So to produce 240 per second, you need basically 750, 800 basically of the common material that you're at least making per second. So the rate that this produces, right, you can hover over there, we can look at here, this is 1,700. If you look at 0.25 of that, we're at double the capacity. So what that really kind of means is the reason that I have bumped the mining productivity so high is A, to let the base continue to run without having to move these miners around at all. But two is so that I don't need speed modules anymore. When we get to Vulcanus, I'll show a earlier design that I created that uses a silo to mine directly into when you need a little bit more speed. But this is basically the final design that we've come up with. And the reason we're using instead of using a silo, we're using a cargo wagon is because you can assign slots to the individual items that you want to be able to buffer. And you have the registered space for. But two, it can hold a lot more than, it's not limited by rocket capacity, it's limited by stack size. So stack size times 40. So that's a convenient thing here, and it works out just enough that we can have enough of these legendary bulk inserters inserting directly into recyclers, and because of the extreme efficiency of recycling ore directly, this setup actually works to produce consistently 240 per second per single miner. So this is the end game setup that I've created. Again, around 1,000 mining productivity, this setup is viable. But when you boost that to about 3K, you no longer need speed modules to be mixed in to get the speed that you need. You can just use straight up just efficiency and quality. Why am I using efficiency? The pollution cloud is absolutely insane on novice. Again, The UPS is going to drop significantly when I look at this, but the UPS cloud is absolutely massive. I cannot zoom out far enough to see the whole thing in frame. So this is like basically where I'm coming with this. This is the pollution cloud that you're going to see. There was a strategy that I employed beforehand. So let's go a little bit into pollution control in the end game. The way that I control it is with basically just running around with legendary Spidertrons and killing all the nests as the pollution cloud grows, and making sure that I have none. Here on here, if we look at showing the entity time, I have finally gotten to a point where the pollution cloud has been stable and it is not growing anymore. So I have effectively here, you're not seeing any units. That's because I've killed literally every single unit that's in the entirety of the map. And the way that you do that is simply if you look at expansion. So if you want to turn on expansion here, if you do this, it'll highlight, show a bunch of green and red check marks. Whenever you see those on the grid, you're going to then effectively know that there is going to be some biters in that area, and you need to go kill them. Biters are a huge UPS hog. They can take up to 2-3 milliseconds of UPS when there's 2,000-3,000 of them. So eliminating them is extremely important in the late game. For seasoned megabasers, this is not going to be a surprise, but for those that have not gotten into it and are curious about it, kill biters. Now, this is a disclaimer. This base is technically modded. What mods am I using? Well, let's get into that. So let's go to this save. So there's a bunch of mods here. What are these mods? Let's go through them. So there's the basic ones that already come with it. There's extra zoom. I like to zoom out. I like to look at the different things in my base. I like to zoom a little bit farther than the actual base game does. Does this affect our vanilla gameplay? No. Then we have the removing weapon particles. This is another just base mod that another one uses. Doesn't do anything other than being a support package. Remove weapon particles. Uses for Promethium ships. This is to reduce the number of particles that you're seeing, and it helps with performance there. Promethium is the worst for UPS. I have not optimized for it. We'll get into that later. Some auto research. It's for auto queuing mining productivity. It's a quality of life thing. I'm not going to sit here and click 8,000 times on the mining productivity. I have better things to do with my life. I let it run overnight, and I let the mining productivity queue up. I could create an auto hotkey script to do this. I don't feel like that's worth it. So that is basically the mod that I use. Rate calculator. That's the thing that I've been showing to show the rates of production. Super helpful for calculating things and testing things out and knowing where your bottlenecks are. I wish they had this in the base game. Space Age, you know what that is. Stats GUI. That's telling me my research finish time. It also showed me the pollution or evolution rate. Why? Well, this started off as a death world. And then decided to go into Megabase. So it was a very slow grind about 3 months ago when I started it. And we had a wonderful time fighting slowly to crawling our way to having a sustainable life. At the end of this, or in another video, I will eventually explain what I did on Gleba, because Gleba was a 600% death world run. I do not recommend that to anyone. It is absolute hell, but it was extremely fun. So continuing on, removing asteroid particles, very similar to removing weapon particles, same reason, helping with Promethium ships. Visible planets. I like seeing the planets in the background. I think it's beautiful. It's fun to look at. Does it take a little bit of UPS? Yes. Is it worth it? Yeah. So I use that. Can I turn all of these mods off and the factory will still run? Yes. So in essence, is this a vanilla playthrough? Strictly? No. Is it something that could be considered vanilla if I turn all these mods off? Absolutely. So if you want to consider this a vanilla base, I'm not going to consider it that, but for all intents and purposes in the way that the science and every single aspect of every build that's in this game or this playthrough, it is vanilla. And everything has been built with vanilla. Every component is building with legendary, so we'll go into that. I have a very simple ship. It's a small ship that effectively is just upcycling and creating constantly legendary components, and that farms all the materials. You'll see this exact same bank setup that you saw with the space science platform. It's exactly the same thing, same logic in terms of when it starts, stops, having a condition for when it should have it. It buffers all the materials. There's a nice little display indicator here that I can hover over. Green means that it's good. There's a couple of different highs. So 90% means it's green. Yellow is anything between 90 and 25%. 25% and below is low. Black means that there's nothing. With that being said, pretty simple. We just have a couple buildings for all the different materials. It makes it, and it ships it to Vulcanus. So let's go into that for a little bit. Let's go down this rabbit hole. Vulcanus, this is my starter base that I created to fund my Death World adventures. This is should definitely be improved. I used to make all the other sciences here: red, green, purple, military, utility science, etc. So I've got little rest in peace grave marks for where they used to live. This base is extremely far apart. This is not great. This should be definitely optimized. Eventually, my plan is to move everything here. I'll get to that eventually, but it felt like it was worth already just demoing this at this point. So, like a lot of things, I'm going to say there's things I want to improve, but you can always improve your base. So, we have exports for all the different materials. This is all for, so tungsten. You're going to have up here is producing, basically, this is an upcycler, a really small, tiny upcycler for making legendary tungsten ore. And otherwise, this base is pretty much dormant. It does absolutely nothing. It just reminds me of the good old days of starting off and conquering Gleba. The only thing that it still produces today, and the main reason I still use it, is for the science and the legendary factory. So legendary factory, all the materials get shipped. We use LDS Shuffle to basically make all the legendary steel and copper that we need in the world. This design was inspired by Nilaus. Credit to him. Pretty good, really good design. I've modified it slightly for my needs, but so it's just a tiny mini bus, makes a couple of different materials, puts them in, and then directly inserts them into silos. Directly inserting things into silos. Why do you do this? You don't need your bots constantly moving around and delivering the materials directly to the silos. You can just have them instantly loaded and ready to launch the moment that your ship hovers. So just minimizing the time that a ship is going around and collecting materials. I have a single freight ship, which we'll talk about later. But basically it just goes around, picks everything up from all the different planets. Otherwise, and the nice thing about higher quality materials is you can also, like blue chips, you can directly insert into silos. You can't do that with your regular ones that for rocket parts, obviously, but you can do that for higher materials or higher quality materials. So that's just something to be aware of. Otherwise, you're seeing here, calcite delivery. Calcite's going to Novice to help make utility science. That's picked up. They are mined directly into silos and then exported. So you just saw them just take off here. The freight ship picks these up and, well, sorry, I take that back. The express ship does this. Express ship goes around and grabs two things. It grabs effectively the bioflux and the calcite and delivers that to Novice on request whenever it runs low. And then we ship them around with trains. Get into that shortly. Next, let's continue on with Vulcanus since we were there. So, metallurgic science. What you're going to see here is we're using the same upcycling technique. However, it's slightly different. We're using a rocket silo. So why is that? Well, technically, at this research mining productivity level, I'm not quite high enough with one to get to the rate that I actually need to sustainably make it. So I'm using speed modules to compensate. If I don't have speed modules here, we'll just do this for a second. You can see this is 349 per second. You need an absolutely insane level of mining productivity, at least 10x what I have right now, to get to the point where you can actually run these straight up just as a single big mining drill. So for that reason, we take a little bit of a hit. You'll see that this is instead of 24.8%, you're going to see that these are 20.4%. So sometimes mixing a little bit of basically speed module 3s and efficiency modules to basically increase the speed drastically, but take a tiny hit to your quality is worth it. Don't be afraid to mix the two. The main reason that I'm using also efficiency modules here, there's no pollution on Vulcanus, but it's actually to reduce the distribution efficiency of the beacon. So you can kind of mess with that. I use legendary components for everything. You can definitely just downgrade this to a lower value, but then your speed module won't have as much of effect. That is the point, but the point being that I use legendary materials for everything. I don't have any more rare or epic or anything, so all my build construction materials are legendary, so this is the way that I design it. I keep it simple that way. I have one material, and I don't have to deal with anything else. So the way this works, you just have now 2 miners, speed module, and it has a single output. This continues to run until effectively it's pink, and that means that it's sleeping. That means that everything has been outputted, and it's not running right now. You're going to see that a lot in a lot of my builds and designs. This pink indicator uniformly across the entire thing means that that particular component is sleeping and is resting. The reason I do that is so that quickly at a glance, I can look at this and see, all right, I got pink indicators everywhere. This isn't running. Can I also see that because the belts aren't moving in this example? Sure. The point just means that, hey, we're full on capacity, and it will help also with other, a lot more complicated designs, especially like Fulgora. So the way this works, use a lot of belts. The belts feed directly into, we have direct insertion for everything here. The tungsten plates are then basically just taking the raw ore and making it into the metallurgic science. Nice thing about metallurgic science is that it literally just needs ores. It's exactly like novice. It's just a huge amount of fluid inputs and just a little bit of the ore that you actually wind up needing. So upcycling, that technique works great here. And I use the update that came out to carve this out with nuclear bombs so that I could create this nice little trench that you're seeing here. So I have one nice clean area for everything. These are designed right now with the limitations that exist with the fluid mechanics, that you get only really about 3,000 per pipe output. So could you put more beacons here? Yes. Is it going to give you anything else? No. So that is the concession that has been made here. Everything is directly inserting into to make landfill. The reason we make landfill is to compact it, and then that compaction gets because it's effectively a 50-to-1 ratio, right? So I can put 50 stone in here before this inserter ever has to dump anything in. So when an inserter that has 16 items picks it up, you're looking at 800 stone that it is carrying at one time and dumping into lava. So that means per swing, it's doing 800. That's really the bottleneck at the end, is just become stone and getting rid of it. So that's the design. You're going to see a lot of circuits. Fluid machines, they do not turn off, ever. No matter what you do. So the conditional logic that I'm going to have in almost all of my builds is this really simple kind of RS latch. What is an RS latch? There's a bunch of good videos and explanations on that, so we're not going to dive into that. But what it basically does is it just keeps and maintains a buffer somewhere between at least 175 and 200K. So when everything is running, this will run constantly. This is just a way to trigger the build. Again, pink indicator, sleeping. That means that all of these machines here are all going to stop. They're not going to be running anymore. And that's actually indicated by this being completely inactive. The core design that I have is if a particular science is not running, I want it to be fully dormant and sleeping, because I don't want any active processing at all on the CPU for this. So otherwise this is just copy and paste, and this makes these modules and the belts come in, and everything else, I'll just talk about it. This is using the base setup that we talked about before on Novice. Side efficiency, because we don't care about pollution here, but this then makes the little bit of coal that you need and inserts it in. I've experimented. This is a rocket part factory for Vulcanus. This is way overkill, but this makes basically 14,000 of all materials per minute, and it is well enough to supply the entire base and more. So I've done it just to minimize the travel distance, and again, just same setup that we had there. That's really what Vulcanus is. That's all it does. Makes the science and the legendary materials and belts. We use a lot of belts, so it produces that. It's a really simple belt setup. I'm not going to go too much into this. A lot of people have come up with probably better designs than I have. It's bootstrapping it, makes it work. So all these materials get shipped around. The legendary materials go and get delivered to all the different planets, and they get used. Let's go into a couple just random fun things. This was a death world. You're going to see some ships here that don't need to exist. I'm a sentimental guy. I like to keep things around. This is the Schwerer Gustav. It's modeled after World War II giant cannon that was created. And basically what it is just an overly, just almost for the memes. This creates and stores over 5,000 artillery shells and sits over Gleba until it runs out. That was mainly for the war on Gleba, so to speak, and conquering the entire planet. The ship is still a mid-game kind of design. It uses still the old type of thruster fuel. It just has sentimental value, and I get a kick every single time of looking at the absolutely ridiculous range that I could potentially use the targeting for the artillery remotes on here. We have actual real artillery on here that has been fired in the past. It has gotten a couple kills that I've done manually just for fun, and it exists. So this is an old design. I've upgraded to legendary just to honor it, and it sits here. The next ship is the Foundation Station. This is, again, modeled after what SF Hobbit has created. I have modified it for my needs. It slightly wider, and again, has my kind of signature display panel on here to let me know what all the materials are. All it does is it goes to all the different planets, has triggers to whenever it runs out of materials from one planet. It'll go to that planet and grab the materials. And it goes until effectively it's sitting with a buffer of 20,000 foundations. And then it just sits over a respective planet and doesn't move. If I need more foundations than another one, I'll just manually kick it off, send it to that other planet, either Vulcanus or Fulgora. Those are the only two planets that need it. And ship the materials down there. Again, just direct insertion, puts all and makes everything, and that's basically it. Otherwise, we've talked already about the science platform to make it legendary space science. I have freighters for everything else, so we're going to go anyway to Fulgora next. So let's just talk about this since it's actively running worker robot speed. This ship is effectively gonna just go around. All these things do is for any of the external planets, I just have a dedicated science ship that goes and gets deliveries. Whenever it runs out, I apologize for that extremely loud noise. So let's zoom out a little bit so that doesn't happen. This pulls the equivalent of 1 million science per trip. Again, equivalent because it's uncommon. And it comes each time and grabs that amount and just slowly drops it over Novice. And you can see by the science indicator that I have here, this is a BP that someone else created. It is effectively just a dashboard monitor that is all just made with display panels and indicates all the different science. So talk about that in 1 second. So effectively all the different ships, they just go around and will get the science and bring it back. We have large amounts so that because just at the rate that we're consuming things, you'll see this has only been here for 20-30 seconds and it's already pretty much dropped everything off. It's trying to just minimize the trips and have a little bit of time where it's sitting over Novice. Doesn't have to necessarily dump everything at once and go from there. So real quick, this science indicator, because I touched on it, it's just a display. It just says it's 0 to 100%. And there's just circuits here that control effectively. I have one global signal for how much I want to have actually inserted into the main core silo chest here. And that is going to be controlled here. These are the requests. That red signal is sent to this, basically to the radar. Radar then comes back over here. And then we monitor that along with the logistics network, how much we have of that science. And then we show all the display indicators. Now, Novice is a little bit different. I actually read the amounts that are on the belt because it's all belt fed. And then that will indicate how much of that science we currently have. So anytime there's a little bit of a gap in the belt, it will kind of slightly drop below. But as long as everything's at 100%, that means everything's running well. So I said we would go to Fulgora, take a pit stop. We're talking about Novice. We're here already. Let's just get into it. What do I mean by these belts? So everything's belted in. So let's start with the very first one, utility science. Again, same exact upcycling setup that I've talked about before. Sits on a patch, grabs everything out of it. Directly fed in. And one little note on this, you're going to see a lot of these wires. I've talked about this before. I try to really limit how long and how often something is active for, especially the wake list timers. So again, very much relying heavily on basically the the indicators for, how much something's actually being used. So I've tested this in a sandbox, and I've proven out that for whenever you're using furnaces, and that's a huge downside to this uncommon or any kind of upcycling setup, is you can't use foundries anymore, so you have to use furnaces. So to limit the amount of furnaces that are being used here, and that there's a lot, there's right now 2,000 active furnaces at the moment, but to limit the amount of time that they're actually running and giving them a chance to stop, the way that this is working is this is controlling very explicitly how often we put copper ore in here. So there's a concept of clocking inserters, which is especially useful for labs, and I'll jump over to that probably next. But the concept is every time that, instead of it reading this belt for is there material there and checking if the electric furnace is going to need to be inserting into it, I'm just conditionally making it grab so that it's only checking. And I'm making sure also that always the belts are fully stocked and loaded all the time, so that it really has only one tick where it has to decide, I need to grab everything, take 5 or 6 more ticks to pick everything up and put it actually into the furnace. That being said, there's a couple places where we don't do that. You see these yellow low lights jumping back and forth. This could be optimized, but this is there's still some conditions there. Point is, this over time, the more and more of these things you add, the better it is, because you can see here, even though we have a huge amount of inserters, and see this little spike of up to 12, 13,000, that's basically this clocking that's going on. It is limiting the amount of active inserters ever at any point in time. So I'll stop there just to finish off the talking about clocking inserters. We're going to go back to the UPS hell area. So this is the master control clock. Basically, what I have found through a lot of testing is that if you limit, there's a clock here that is going to basically say, hey, every 60 ticks, I want to do something with normal science. Every 126-second ticks, I want to do something with uncommon, and so forth. So that's kind of the rate at which you're consuming something. So just to make the check simple, 60 ticks is 1 second in-game time. So, or 60 UPS that you're talking about. So every single time that a tick happens at the 60 tick mark, it's going to check something to do with uncommon. What does that do? This indicates the number of ticks that I want to enable it for. I found with bulk inserters, you really only need to do it for 1 tick. It needs basically to grab 4 items and insert it into the lab. And that's all that it actually needs to do. No matter how many beacons, legendary beacons you put around it, 1 tick is plenty. For the only difference is you can't really do that for agriculture science, because it is actually a much higher consumption rate depending on the freshness of the agriculture science. I've compensated with that by running multiple belts. I just run 2 instead. So even if the spoilers raise 50%, it's fine. It can still pick up 8 in the same time. So otherwise, uncommon is the same thing, 1 tick, but it's every 2 seconds that it will check on it. And so this just sends a signal in here, and you're going to see basically the little light indicators that are letting you know which one of them are being currently active. And you're seeing this kind of like, it looks like effectively like a shift register, and it's moving over and cycling between all of these different ones. The save file will be around. You can copy any of these blueprints that you want to see, but you can do that. So zooming out a little bit, this is all the belts that are getting fed in from all the different sciences. They come in here. This is the monitors that I was talking about. It reads the entire full belt, hooks them up to a radar, and then all those radar signals feed back to the main control center, this control panel that you saw. So we talked about red science. Let's go to green science. I apologize, I don't remember the names of them. Green science is done the same way. We upcycle them, make them into the least number of machines possible, produce the rest. Here I've decided, better or worse, just to conditionally insert things quickly through rocket silos. I found that it was slightly more UPS performant than putting them on belts, just the number of items that are interacting with the belt, because I only need now one thing pulling in and out of essentially a gigantic chest, and those chests, this is like an extremely fast turbo belt. So you're talking about effectively each one of these can pull at 120 items per second. So each inserter on here is twice the speed of one of these belts. So I'd use that, and it's been working out. So that's how this one works. We'll go now to military science. All these silos resemble kind of rockets or blades. The term blade has been coined again by SF Hobbit, so I'm not going to take his name and or like his term out of context. Credit is where credit is due. The blade concept is you take everything from raw base materials and you feed them directly into a giant assembly that makes the end product that you need. I found that's been really useful for creating in the sandbox the entirety of the build that you need. Let's go ahead and at this point go and switch to railgun shooting speed so that we can show military science kicking off and running. So here for military science, effectively the way that this one works is, again, the same thing. It raw upcycles all the materials. You're going to see, again, a lot of these rocket silo builds pulling items in and out from them. And this is just mainly because these wall assemblers here, they're taking 300 items per second. I technically need 2 full belts, and to take that, I need like 8 inserters to do that. To fully take items off a belt, because the bulk inserters or the stack inserters are significantly slower pulling things off of a belt than they are pulling them out of a chest. So again, I'm using rocket silos here to put items in and out of them to deliver them just faster. And so I need less inserters that way. Again, just purely for optimization purposes. Again, full circuits. You can see here areas where that is not actually fully circuited. You see the wake up lists. But you're going to see consistently on all the really expensive ones like the furnaces, all those inserters pulling constantly in and out, reading from the belts. That's been minimized. The only times I don't do it is when truly an inserter is going to be running full time all the time, and there's no reason to add an overhead, and it is an overhead, of adding circuits to it. That's the exception that I usually will pull. Are there places still to add them? Yeah. So that's military science. Again, upcycling the ore. This is going to probably shock a lot of people. Purple Science is an absolutely ridiculous build. You can just see by the amount of pure belts that are running directly into here. So, yeah, so we just switched to Railgun. Let's go back to Worker Robot speed so we can see Purple Science kick off and actually get used finally. So we have an absolute, and UPS is going to die when I look at this. There's a lot of belts. It's a lot, about 76 lanes of materials, 240 per second each is a lot. Each one of these is a blade. Let's pause for a second. Let's go and let's get the zoom out limit just a lot higher so that we can, as we're going through this and talking about it. By the way, press the pause button. Pro tip, you can pause the game and save where you were at. This is not a normal EPS. I think I've made that clear. I'm going to stop harping on it. So this whole setup effectively produces steel. This whole module here is steel. You're going to have a dedicated area then for producing all the materials that you need. And then crafts, finally, this is a rocket silo inserting build. It's going to grab all the different base materials that it needs to make 240 per second per lane of the advanced circuits. It's going to then pass it through a huge chain of these rocket silos. Again, using the same concept that we had for military science to make the stone. And that eventually then goes into making the furnaces, the electromagnetic plants, and this is enough to supply and create a fully stacked lane, and it's about just 240 per second. The steel furnace array is the most UPS efficient one that I could find, with utilizing effectively per lane 16 furnaces. And again, clocking inserters, pulling in and out of it makes a big difference. Other than that, I have a small petroleum setup, and like we said, clocking how long they're running to reduce the active time. And then again, just seeing here, these are disabled when it's not running. Water input, everything is raw, and then just upcycling, just an absolute plethora of these. Let's go ahead and reset our zoom level so that I don't zoom out that far anymore. Alrighty. So that's Purple Science. We grab, yeah, basically we're belt feeding everything in, oil, kind of get everything back to normal. Real quick, since I'm here and talking about it, I have a gigantic perimeter wall. This is totally overkill. Again, because it's a death world, I'm using a lot of flamethrowers, just because I'm trying to honor that this was a death world playthrough. I like having them here. Is this taking a UPS hit? I don't think so. I haven't tested it. It stays here. Otherwise, I have a train set up for perimeter control. These trains go around and they just try to take everything out with artillery. The range on them is abysmal. The pollution cloud has grown way further than that. I'm just using Spidertrons now. I did for a brief moment try to start using agriculture towers. This is a huge circuit setup that was spacing multiple of these deployments. So there's one here, 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 huge farming setup there, there, and there. This actually did maintain the pollution cloud and would actually keep it all isolated in here. It was enough to absorb all the pollution. It just took about 1.5 milliseconds of update time, and I can't afford it anymore, so we are no longer running that setup. The main reason is just the number of particle effects that are being generated by the agriculture towers. If I could totally turn off the animations, this is a perfectly viable way to not overly bloat your save file just purely because of pollution. If there's ever a game update that optimizes these agriculture towers, I'm all for it, and we can turn this back on. That's why I haven't deleted it. I'm hoping that one day it will be able to be active, because I'd love to use this solution. It's optimized that actually, if I show the chunk overlay, grid. Let's do that. And each one of these are directly in one grid. Or in one chunk, so that, and they're just, it's one per, it's enough to basically maintain and easily eat all the pollution in that chunk, and then more, and be able to over saturate it. Trees are definitely the easiest way to kill pollution, like by far. If I look at pollution management back in the days when I used to actually do it. Let's go further back. Yeah, so this was pollution absorbed by trees. This was the control circuits that would turn everything on and off and deal with it. It could easily handle up to 226, 300,000 per minute peak. So well enough to compensate for the 217 or so, 250, 60,000 that we're generating every minute right now, actively sustained. So really cool concept. Not UPS performant, so it got scrapped. Tangentially not related, let's go talk about utility science. Not tangentially related at all. It does generate a lot of pollution, but that's about it. Utility science, actually, no matter what megabase you do, whether a lot of people, you can make common science on Vulcanus, a lot of people do that, that's totally fine. I'd strongly argue that no matter what you do, this method of upcycling, it needs a very tiny amount of ore per blade. Like, just needs basically not even a full lane of each material type. So you're seeing this is like a yellow belt's worth, or an unstacked version of a green belt will be totally sufficient for this. Everything else is basically a fluid input. So that means you can use straight up just the common ore mining recipe to make everything that you're going to need here. The only downside is you need to ship in calcite into the actual site and ship that in. So that's delivered on trains and is brought in. Otherwise, the setups, again, I'm using rocket silos to insert everything. Same thing that we did to make the advanced circuits. We're doing the exact same thing to make the processing units. We're using the benefit then, here's the one build where it's one of two different sciences that can finally actually benefit from the wonderful foundries. And that is because we can make legendary or like uncommon plastic here to feed it. Uncommon plastic is dirt cheap at 300% productivity. That's what all of these machines are, is 300%. Because I've capped out the research on all of them to basically maximize speed and minimize the number of buildings. I've used some efficiency in different areas. Is it really worth it? I don't know. A little bit helps with pollution management. can take it out. So this makes all the plastic that you're going to need. The fluid inputs count for the rest. And then this just outputs and creates then the utility science. I'm especially proud of this design here. This is making exactly the amount of flying robot frames. This works for any science material that you want to produce enough to make 240 per second to saturate a fully stacked belt. And the way that I do this is there is just enough beacons to fit completely around here to make the amount that I need here at 22 per second, and consumption of a half bank is exactly 21, so just slight oversaturation. And this works by directly feeding into silo, very tight controlled parameters on how much gets inserted into here. And the final key that I figured out in order to make this work is I have a dual purpose assembly machine. This makes either gears or engine units, depending on which one is higher or lower in the system. It takes the priority of gears, so whenever gears run low, it goes and creates that, but otherwise it's always making basically the engine units until it doesn't need to make anything anymore. And just by the fact that whenever you're done with a recipe, you can utilize the dump chest to put it right back into the silo. The only condition there that you got to kind of worry about is, hey, make sure the silo never gets overly full. So just limit the amount of materials you're actually putting into here. So just tightly controlling that. That's basically it on utility science. Let's touch a little bit on chemical science. The only tricky part that existed with this build, everything else is exactly the same in terms of other builds that you've seen, in terms of the raw ores being inserted in the fluids, so water and crude oil. The only difference here of the designs I've covered is this upcycler to create sulfur. So I found that after a lot of trial and error, a little bit of a mix of modules here works pretty well. To have utilize the cryogenic plants and the number of slots they have in there to have enough quality, again, somewhere around 25 to 28% is enough usually, and then just raw upcycling and destroying any of the common material. And then just effectively just making the particular the sulfur or whatever it is making the uncommon sulfur, and then just conditionally, when something is over a certain amount, so over 32, it will destroy that other material. So see a little bit of floating of the other materials that are in here, but it effectively destroys it, continues to upcycle it, and it makes enough to produce the amount of sulfur that you need per blade. There's 8 of them. There's 8 lanes. Each one is designed to make exactly that amount. And the reason that these blade designs are so powerful is that when I used to be running at 2 million SPM, I only needed half of these. So you want to go up? Cool. Just add more of them and just run the raw inputs that you need again, just from a patch that's nearby. And that is effectively it. And then just add it to the really long belts that fly all the way up here back to where we're going. I'm not using trains. Trains, it's a crime that they're not legendary. There's no legendary version of trains for higher cargo throughput, because the inserters are so fast, and really your limitation eventually just becomes the start and stop time of trains. And so belting it directly in is consistent, rock solid, never have to worry about it. On the concept of trains, what do we use them for? So I have gone through the complexity of making legendary nuclear fuel. Why do I do that? It's wicked fast. So vehicle top speed is 137% on legendary, but the acceleration is the big kicker, 475%. These ships are really wicked fast when they run like this. You can see how fast this, not ship, car, sorry. The locomotives are really fast. They can quickly take off. 1-1 trains are enough. They run really quickly to the locations that they need to. There's circuit controls on all the different train stations so that when they're low, they send a request to go and create them. A lot of people created really wonderful videos on that. Mine are not the best. I also don't recommend my particular blueprint for trains on here. This is just something that I created quick and dirty to create something that fit in my original grid pattern. And these deliver them to Utility Science. And the same thing is done for feeding the rest of some things like Bioflux and delivering the Bioflux directly to my biter island. So now that we've seen that, let's go hop on a ride and go over to the biter island. This is not the most optimal way to do this. This has been optimized specifically to create biter eggs, basically as fast as possible in one launch. Why do we do that? I'm just going back here just so that you can see again that we're at 60 UPS, because me looking at everything is going to consistently dip it, and I'm just going to show this running at 60 UPS so people can know I'm not just full of it. Effectively, the Promethium ships take 256,000 biter eggs per launch. They are going to take those, deliver them then to the what was I going to say? Into the ships, and they're going to take all of the biter eggs and then run as fast as possible to the edge of the solar system. And when they're over there, then they're just going to consume them as fast as possible and then delete them. This ship here is designed and heavily inspired by, again, SF Hobbit. He created this kind of concept. I've created my own, modified it with kind of some automatic retention mechanisms for whenever you happen to have biters that are on the ship for too long. There's a timer the moment it leaves novice, and it calculates the time it would need to dump the eggs and eject them. So if you had, 14,400 biter eggs, it would take exactly a minute to offload those. So it accounts for how much is in there. So that way, sometimes I need to deliver eggs over to Gleba for creating more of the better soil. It kind of allows it to be a multi-purpose ship. I very rarely get Promethium anymore. I've gotten to research level 75, which is, or I guess at this point, 76. I was working on 77 and I've stopped. I just find that the diminishing return is just 10% for running it consistently. It's not as worth it as just designing better factories for everything else. So where is I going with this? So it has an automatic ejecting mechanism. It has 4 labs. Basically, and this produces at peak about 36,000 per minute. Let's see if I'm right. Okay, it can make 46,000. Realistically, it can't actually pull that amount from off the Promethium asteroid chunks off the belt. So it's enough to make, on average, between 2 of these ships, I have 2 of them, they're going to make 30,000 per minute. Take about 40 minutes to go in and out of the solar system, abusing the crap out of thruster stacking so that this can go 750 kilometers per second out to minimize the amount of time that the actual eggs are just sitting on the ship. And then otherwise, when it's out, there's a calculator that I have that measures exactly the distance we are out, so 300,000 kilometers out. For example, and it will measure that and it'll say, okay, so we're at 300,000 kilometers out. I want to go, and at that point, I run at full speed. The moment that we get to a moment that we're less than that target, for example, let's go to the second one here. We're going to drop down the speed to 500 kilometers per second, and we're using that with pulse width modulation. So again, that kind of thruster control sequence that I showed, it basically is just going to cycle on and off these pumps to control that speed. Another way that you could do this too is just turn off these other banks. I just like the tight control of exact speed control so that I could tune it, fine tune it as I was designing the ship, to just have an exact target speed. And that was just the decision that I made. So it works pretty well. It uses a token system, and it effectively will tightly control when the eggs are actually launched. So I'll show this. This is basically my control panel for when things are going to get launched and exported from Novice. So here you're going to see it's effectively monitoring two conditions. Again, there's like a circuit condition here that's like, hey, I only want to run it when we are basically less than 1 million, and until we get to 5 million to buffer it. After that, I don't want to continue to launch more eggs. I don't need more than that, and it won't return the effectively, it won't finalize the biter, like basically the launch sequence. So you can see here there's a timer. The time since we last launched everything has been 28 hours since the last time we did it. We're not doing research productivity very much. Basically, Aquillo and here they exchange this epic barrel. The barrel comes in, it's filled over on Aquillo, and then that exact fluid is then emptied into here. It is then directly pumped into emptying the crude oil barrel, put into basic oil processing, and then burned effectively. This will burn forever, so it's an easy way to recycle it. And otherwise, you could do this with recyclers. Doesn't matter, same technique. There's some controls here, and this is getting definitely into the implementation details and the weeds, but there's a couple different ones that just kind of space out how far these ships are from each other. It's more of a UPS optimization. When they're in the thick of it, they're using the highest amount of UPS, even with some of the mods I have to disable and slow things down. ADHD brain, I need to delete this. That being said, yeah, we're spacing out basically on the space map here. You want effectively, they're going to go about 500,000 kilometers out, and you really want them to be spaced kind of far enough apart so that when one is coming back from the thick of it, the other one is coming back in. And so I just have this control panel here so that I can set basically a multiplier that's somewhere within 12 minutes, and then, or 15 minutes, whatever the number would be based on the speed of your ship. And then it just prevents the final launch command, this green signal, to go out. That green signal then goes and populates to all of these individual pods. These pods then will trigger a launch sequence, and at that point, that the moment has launched, it will go and tell all of these to activate, and it will take the absolutely perfectly fresh biter eggs, put them all into a rocket silo at that time, and launch them. There's an argument to be made for higher quality captive biter spawners, because each one of these, like we talked about with active states, they're active all the time, they're constantly running, they're using UPS. I'd actually argue you could delete these and never run research productivity again, but that kind of goes against some hopes that Promethium ships will eventually be more UPS optimal. Just the number of explosions that they have to render and the particles effects that get generated by asteroids is just extremely high. And it's just... yeah, designing UPS efficient Promethium ships means that you really have to compromise and basically all the rest of your designs for everything else that you're going to be working on. So, it's a huge limitation, and designing everything at basically half speed, because it's 120-second research speed. For me personally, is not a fun way to play this game. I like to see how fast can I research all the other tech that I actually care about. I think there's a strong argument to be made for worker robot speed being the absolute best tech that you can get that's going to impact your base the most. You just really can't get around pulling things out of the hub here without robots. And having it going fast enough. You could maybe make an argument that trains could pull it out and then deliver it and directly insert it out of here, but now you're limited on the amount of inserters you can actually pull out of the hub at any point in time, and definitely would love to see some iterations and expansions on that concept. Just right now, the few sciences that we have, the actual time that the logistics manager is being utilized is very low compared to pretty much everything else. So logistic manager is at peak. You're seeing like 0.6 milliseconds, which is not bad for what it's worth. So that's kind of some concepts there. So what I was going to say is worker robot speed is probably the best thing that you can be researching at any point in time. The only other thing that can actually cap out is that is good is railgun shooting speed. So getting that to 24, which I haven't worked on fully yet. Let's go ahead and transition that as we talk about the other sciences. Let's go to Aquillo next. This is going to cap out at 24. Once you hit there, you just can't go any faster than that. And then it kind of makes you start to question, is there any real purpose to Aquillo science after that point for anything other than research productivity? The answer really just becomes no, there is nothing you need. So there's actually an argument that I could make that once I get to the point of railgun shooting speed being at level 24, I could actually kill the remainder of these banks of science. These are, and just for aesthetic reasons, let's take the night vision off. So each of these will make exactly 240 per second. The ratios work out really, really nicely. You need exactly a full lane's worth of ice to basically produce the exact same amount of the cryogenic science packs. So the way I do that is I just have a single belt runs through here. And the nice thing is here, you can really kind of just use a fluid bus. You just need the basement, like fluids input is everything. And the only thing you need is uncommon holmium, which is pretty easy to do on Fulgora. And the way that works on Fulgora is, we'll talk about that real quickly. I just have this setup here, this kind of butterfly setup. What this does is this makes about 5,000 uncommon holmium per minute, which is overkill for what I'm actually going to need on Aquillo. And again, that same freight ship will come by, pick it up from here, deliver it over to Aquillo. The main benefit, and I think like uncommon or even higher qualities, you could even make a strong argument for legendary Aquillo science, is the fact that it's all fluids except for the minimal amount of holmium plates that you actually need, and ice. So a lot of people you'll see they can make legendary versions of this because you can just very easily create legendary ice in space. I've opted to just keep it simple. I don't want an extra ship and complexity. The way that these work is I have these 4 modules. They're just straight upcycling the uncommon ice. And they're just making it, again, kind of just using full quality and a little bit of speed, and then just recycling and destroying everything else that it doesn't need. And this is enough here to make 240 ice per second. It's going to take a little bit until eventually our good old ship over here comes by and drops off the cryogenic science. So it'll come in a second, and then we'll see the actual entire network come alive. So I'll talk through some of the other things that we've got here. Directly inserting into silos. Do this. It's really, really good for exporting things. You can have a little bit of a buffer. A little bit. I mean, it's a pretty big buffer. It's basically just accounting for that you have continuous operation of the rocket silos, and you're not relying then constantly on the cryogenic plant or whatever the actual base material assembly machine on the planet that you're looking for it to run when you need the science. It decreases the loading time and allows them to constantly run even when the ship is traveling back and forth between planets. Again, minimizing the number of belts you're interacting with. Direct insertion's good. Rest of Aquillo, while I wait for this, there's 8 of these blades. They're exactly the same. Great concept, copy and paste. A really good UPS optimization that you can make is creating smaller heat networks. I used to have a heat network that time that was in the over 1.1 to 1.5 millisecond uptick time. The reason for that is that every single little space and distance away from your heating node, or like how long your whole heat network is, needs to be calculated from the source. At least that's my assumption on the way the algorithm works. So if I very deliberately do not connect these, that way the distance, I'm assuming it's a distance or pathfinding algorithm for how far they need to be, each of these heat nodes need to be calculated. If you have a shorter distance, or especially in this condition, it actually decreases your overall heat network and consumption, and will reduce your UPS time. So small heat networks, great. Small, low localized ones. Use that concept everywhere on everything on the base. So let's just go ahead and watch this, because this is just a beautiful view here of all these rockets launching at once in short succession. And then everything kicks off. It's going to start producing the ice that we need here. Again, just raw upcycling everything else, and the higher quality materials come down here and get destroyed. Yeah, that's effectively it for Aquillo Science. It's very simple, and eventually when we go over to Fulgora, hopefully timing-wise, we'll be able to see that. So where are we at? We've got, oh yeah, this is part of the legendary rocket fuel creator. This is, again, a blade. Takes in literally just crude oil and some ammonia, and will upcycle the ammonia with the ammonia rocket fuel recipe to get all the way to legendary. I have been running this for a while. This is used to supply the nuclear fuel on Gleba and Novice. So, other than that, we have a couple different things. We just make a couple legendary materials here for a couple components that Vulcanus doesn't make. And the rest of the base is just, here's the other part of the token system that I haven't shown. This will, on a belt, take the raw material that it needs, or sorry, not the raw material, the crude oil barrel, put it into this rocket, and we'll then send it to the individual ship that's hovering above. Whichever one has it means that it can leave. Kind of going back to Mark II sitting up here. He's waiting on his crude oil barrel. He can't do that because Mark III currently has it. And Mark III can't actually move until it has its spider eggs, and it can't get its spider eggs because I'm saying you're not allowed to send it anything from this control panel here. That's kind of closing that knot on what I was talking about before in terms of where does it come from. The bots will deliver the uncommon holmium, like you're seeing here. Doesn't need a whole bunch to be delivered at any point in time, but we'll slowly send them from one planet to another. Let's see. So Fulgora, let's go through this one. This is the most complicated planet by far. Just the whole concept of having to go in reverse from higher level materials down. This is my favorite planet, hands down. It's the most complicated, most interesting designs. The entire community makes like constant different versions. No one design is similar to the other. If you like circuits, this is your planet. It's amazing. So I decided to go the route just recently before this video, start diving into the world of, okay, we can make uncommon holmium plates. And the way we do it is with electromagnetic plant. So that inspired the fact that, hey, since we have a stupidly high mining productivity level, can we apply that concept to directly mining from a patch like we're doing here, but instead, let's go ahead and upcycle the base material, the scrap directly. So that's what this design is. This is by far the most complicated design in the entire base. Because this is so complicated, I've created this little dashboard here that gives you indicators for each of the different fluids that are in the system, each of the individual materials, what you're low on. It has values that it's looking for in the whole system. So fluids, these are the set points for what I consider to be 100%. All gets transmitted back with wires from different individual chests or rocket silos, etc. Comes back in here, and we can look at little indicators for how much we have of each one. And so this whole system should be, in theory, holmium limited. Let's talk about the most interesting part. This design here is what inspired and gave me the inclination, the thought that it would be possible to produce 240 per second supercapacitors and accumulators. So 240 per second for each. I realized that you can effectively pull at about a 4 to 2.1, 2.2 kind of ratio, uncommon to common, directly out of a silo hub with only one miner. This is pretty cool because what that means is that I can use one miner directly going into this hub, and then I can pull out 4 individual belts. It's enough exactly using every single possible space on here. Well, almost. You could technically have one more belt, but it's enough to basically pull everything out. And I have 2 little indicators here that is letting me know if I am low on uncommon or common, and if there's a bottleneck. And that's what those 2 green symbols are. They're either green, red, yellow, same as the other ones, and they flicker when you have a bottleneck. This all gets fed. Uncommon is processed here. It's directly inserted. This was originally inspired by another community member, Vader Dev. He made an original design that made common science, and I used some of the core concepts that he used there because it's an extremely UPS efficient design to make 40,000 common per minute. And I've decided to take on the challenge, so let's just go and make it uncommon. It's significantly more complex. UPS wise, it's very similar. It's almost exactly the same. It takes about 40 milliseconds, or like 0.04 milliseconds more of UPS from testing compared to his design. So it's slightly less efficient. But because of the compaction that you get with uncommon science, it means you need less bot usage on novice and also less inserter swing time on the labs. Quickly to touch on that, I talked about clocking, but I never actually talked about what it's doing. So this limits the swings on the individual inserters going into the lab. This took a huge amount of UPS and it actually reduced it. Because again, talking about active time. Normally, these are constantly monitoring the lab for when it has to pull something off the belt. And because it is only swinging once every basically 2 seconds now for uncommon, these are only active for 1 tick out of 120. So it's a lot less. Instead of this little green mark that you're seeing where it's constantly monitoring it if it needs to go and grab something. And so you can see the common one here is ticking a lot more than the uncommons. And that's, again, yeah, it kind of basically is a reduction in overall usage on labs. And also notice with labs, if you're using all uncommon, and that is an argument for it as well, the consumption rate on the labs is actually at a point where it's not utilizing the lab then quite as much. And there is some slight start and stops here too. I'm fine with that. I don't need it constantly running. You could technically bump it up slightly higher than this by clicking it to 2 ticks. Very simple to do. We could just modify this to 2 and it won't have an issue anymore. At least I don't believe so. But then the labs are active all the time. So that's just a consideration there. I decided to just opt for it. I'm okay with the occasional start stops. It is just a slight UPS improvement. It's still consuming the full amount from these belts. Well, not exactly technically, so it could slightly be higher. Anyway, it's just slight little coverage amounts on there of things that I have been experimenting with and messing with. So, back to Fulgora. Where was I? So the rocket silos will then make will scrap everything. It will delete using upcycling into hazard concrete to delete concrete. Don't need it in uncommon. I do need it in common later, which we'll talk about. Turns out you do actually need to preserve all this holmium. Holmium is really, really useful. Keep it. Please don't ever delete it. So this is all used in these holmium solution here. This is constantly... Oh, wow. That is not connected. Well, that's the thing that needs to be fixed. We'll fix that later. So technically we don't need these two. Yay! UPS optimizations. You can delete them. So that means I can delete these two. What a wonderful solution. Look at what we've decided and figured out today. So this is making the holmium. It's constantly consuming it. Little backup buffers for everything, because you could clog on something at any point in time, depending on what's being used. So you want to always have some mechanism to destroy a base material. I'm using belts here, and it's feeding everything now into kind of this like mini little bus system here. It is going... There's some end of the lines that delete the excess materials we don't need. Like I have absolutely no use for low density structures other than making a little bit of copper that I need to make the accumulators. That feeds in here and generates them. Otherwise, there's a huge bank of holmium solution. This makes per build exactly 1 million holmium solution per minute. And again, using the same throttling control logic here to... Nope, that is the wrong one. Where am I in my own base? Yeah, just tight control just to start and stop them, to have like a little bit of usage here and there. Inside here, when they're inserting in and out of the silo, this is the large setup of the 16 lanes that come in. Each of these can feed basically 480 per second. It'll destroy conditionally all the extra materials it doesn't need. But then it upcycles the uncommon iron. You're kind of limited on that. That's the one limitation you're not going to get straight out of just the uncommon... what was I going to say? Uncommon scrap. But you can easily compensate that by just making the iron and upcycling it into steel chests. It's really fast. It's definitely wasteful, but it's a fast way to get it, and it will continue to upcycle it and will easily keep the iron plate production that you need across all of them. I do that, and then additionally, any other excess iron that I need. Wow, there's things I need to clean up like this. This is not used. I wind up just destroying it. Anything extra that exists that's in there, so just to prevent bottlenecks. Same concept on all of these. All these banks are doing exactly the same thing. They're creating that, feeding it into this main system. And then finally, the higher complicated thing that's going to limit you is not really fluids. That's easy to get just by destroying the scrap. It's actually the most difficult thing is maintaining the 12,000 per minute uncommon holmium plates that you need. So basically that butterfly island we showed before, this is just a way more complicated version of that. Let's go back and shove on our beautiful goggles because it's dark on Vulcan or Fulgora right now. So here, the rocket silos are here being used as a buffer medium to help recycle any of the materials that we need. So per module, we have, it turns out you have just enough raw concrete, steel, just from scrap, and you never need to destroy it, really. Going directly into these rocket silos that create then the refined concrete, so at 480 per second, and these there's some gaps, but it's close enough. Fulgora is a giant garbage chute. There's some things that are truly full and sometimes not. So anyway, tangent aside, electromagnetic plant upcycling is not technically the most efficient way to do this, but I've chosen it for a specific reason. Technically, the more efficient route, if you want both holmium plates and supercapacitors, which we do want, is upcycling supercapacitors. That is definitely your best way to go and get that science that you need. I'm going to say this for later date. Let's go back to this. What was I going to say? It's just really slow. Like the base rate on these, like a supercapacitor, is 10-second crafting time. and it's only 2 holmium plates that you're going to get. Electromagnetic plants take 150. So per second, this is taking 122 holmium plates. So you need less buildings, in essence, to upcycle the materials. Is it as efficient? No. In terms of like raw resources that you're consuming. In this situation, I don't care because I need to anyway get rid of the 16 fully stacked lanes of scrap all the time. So where does that go into? Holmium solution? I can make a lot of plates pretty easy. So this is the easiest route, at least UPS wise, that I found to quickly upcycle everything. The way that they work, just circuit controlling what is getting inserted here. This is very tightly controlled so that there's always enough space for us to recycle and potentially get a common electromagnetic plant materials back and have it still not be clogged and shoved back into here. The uncommon only doesn't get upcycled because you're going to get too much rare as a byproduct. So it creates the uncommon, shoves it into here, goes into this, quickly recycles it, shoves it into this chest, and then there's some circuit controlled recyclers here that I had originally designed these so that I had one that could do either steel or refined concrete, but because of the way that I've compacted this, having the 2 different sides here, this is plenty for both sides to quickly recycle all the excess materials, and has a little storage chest here just for the couple byproducts, because I want these inserters to only insert into here when there's enough for the recipe, so when there's 8 of that material. So this cycles through all the different qualities, will destroy effectively then that particular material as fast as possible. And yeah, this makes consistently enough to supply the space. Is it truly 240 per second? No, it's closer to, instead of 14,400 a minute, it's like 1300, 13k per minute. But that's actually all that we actually need consumption wise over here to produce effectively the holmium plates that we need. So that's enough, and this feeds in, goes into the system, and then exports here. Rocket silos, direct insertion again. Whenever you have, I decided just directly insert into 2 different rocket silos. This is about 30 per second. Technically, once you get to like the 40 per second, you get into a point where you could actually just have it feeding always constantly too. 20 is kind of the threshold or so that I found for one rocket continuously firing. But yeah, so this is because it's in the middle. I've kind of split the difference. I've got 2 rockets, silos, and just enough of a buffer so that it's constantly running, and will just utilize 2 rockets. It's also faster delivery to the ship. Ship needs to make less trips and can have a larger volume that's storing. I have 3 islands like this. This makes 40k respectively, so 40, 80, 120, and that's enough to power the whole base. Tightly controlled. There's whenever it's making science here, see these waves, because it's just slightly overclocked for what we actually need. So we have slight periods of downtime. This thing gracefully shuts down once we hit what's considered the sleep timer. That means that all the conditions here are satisfied. We have all the base materials, so things to launch rockets, things to make the actual science, and then finally the science itself. Once that fills up with a buffer, so these end caps here, once these are full, then the system will gracefully shut down, and we'll turn off all of these little inserters that are directly inserting into the, that are continuing to make materials. So the whole base basically shuts down. There's a little bit of lag as the rest of these materials are scrapped and destroyed, but system just clogs up, stops. This has been running consistently. I've been stress testing this for the last 10 hours, and we are exactly at our consumption rate of what can I spell? Electromagnetic science. So we're exactly matching it. We're completely fine. And then again, those dips are very normal. That about covers Fulgora. I have the original starter base. Again, I'm sentimental. I'll keep everything around. This is here just to simply make the legendary materials that we need. I have a very simple upcycling setup here. Creates all the... this is my first foray into making electromagnetic plants, and it upcycles it. This is before I started using rocket silos. Definitely could be using rocket silos, and this build could be even smaller. Eventually I'll switch to that. I don't need more. This is plenty for what I need. Other than that, we have a giant farm of just an absolutely absurd amount of these foundations. We used to have a huge array of accumulators. Like, you'll just... Yeah. There used to be a lot of accumulators here. We've just switched everything now. It's just fusion power. It's just simple. I don't need more complexity. Just keeping everything the same. Simplicity is king, so going with that. Completely overkill setup here just to make only holmium and stone to make effectively holmium to export. Don't need it anymore. Can be torn down. So a lot of tech debt, things to clean up. But really the heart of this whole entire system, this island, this island, this island, this island, and a little bit of legendary materials. That's really the entirety of Fulgora. This brings us to last, but certainly not least, Gleba. Like I said, this was a death world. I've marked this as my Hilo landing pad. This is where the first attack on Gleba occurred. Fought here, valiant battle. We won, ultimately, in the end, and we have cleared everything. This comes to the part of the video where I will disclaim that I have touched the editor for one thing, and it has been to reduce the amount of enemies from 600% back down to 100%. I got sick and tired once I decided to go to Megabase levels of dealing with the absolutely absurd level of enemies that you have to deal with, and my army of Spidertrons here were as valiant as they are. Yes, they could kill everything, but they would be so dense that you could never fully tame and stop expansion on Gleba. So at 100%, you can do it. They are not as tightly dense anymore. So I have, sadly, touched the editor for one and only one thing, to switch it back to 100%, to get out of the death world, which is a compromise that I made. I could have gone and issued a command to delete everything, but I chose instead to not do that. So that we can actually see the effects of Gleba running. Let's kill everything here. Let's go to stronger explosives. Quickly, let's talk about lag. There is an inherent lag that happens because it needs to first clear out the amount of science that's here. I have the ability to optionally control that. So I can switch out. There is basically a way here. There's a timer that will check basically every 45 minutes, and it will say, hey, I want to purge all the science that's here. That issues a command to go and destroy it, and it will destroy it until there's none left. And that's what these little logic conditions are. Running all the time agriculture science and destroying it on a timer does improve your freshness by a significant portion. It costs UPS though. So I've opted for, I'm fine with a little bit of lag as we wait for basically the freshness to naturally increase. So the inserters that are inserting it are actually grabbing the most spoiled first. You could go for the freshest and just let it die. I've just decided that I'd rather just deal with the fact that there's a little bit of lag in the system. Let it buffer. This is enough to get to research productivity and just sustain it even with 50%. But I'd rather it slowly churn through and get the freshness level up if I'm going to run this. Because in reality, if you look at the timer here, this can run for 64 hours. well, technically 20 some or 30 hours once it gets back up to 4 million. So let's wait on that a little bit. But the point being, go back to Gleba. I'm fine with effectively 5 minutes of running at 2 million because it's going to run for 30 hours at that speed and continuously at 4 million. So I'm okay with that. Same thing here. So now showing this is the blades that I've designed for agriculture science. So when these take off, right now there's some lag in the system. We're only at 84% until we start getting all the fresh, basically, until everything is again basically made fresh again for that particular science. So the way that I do this, and we'll demonstrate that here, is I have effectively I'm using trains. Trains, legendary fuel. They're fast. It actually makes a difference on the freshness, and it actually makes it viable because once this is finally fully up and running, I can hit about 95-96% freshness using trains. And it also means I can use a lot of patches all over the place. You could make an argument that you could have a quote blade design that incorporates a full farm. That's probably slightly more UPS efficient. But I really like trains. I miss them from the original Megabase I design, so I've kept them here. So these farms will conditionally belt feed all of everything down into these requester chests. And this is the main reason I constantly am running bots, because they quickly and efficiently will pull things out of these buffer chests. And the logic on all of these inserter arms is that it will only pick up items when the Yamako or the other respective fruit, jelly nut, is under 8,000. That means that the buffered chests don't have more than basically a full cargo load. And that's kind of nice because there's an inherent lag in the system as it goes through these belts, so it kind of overshoots and will then on demand have enough for the next train and so forth. It's kind of like that flow-based design. So I have this here. Same thing for jelly nuts. Big, huge tree farm, constantly pulling things out with belts. Same logic, gets fed into effectively into buffered or into storage chests, and then they get fed into these trains. Trains all come in. There's a central cargo hub. I've used really minimal, tiny little compact ones. I just find them fun to work with. Are they optimal? No. Could they be unloaded faster? Yeah. But this works and is enough to minimize the number of inserters that I'm using and to just have two continuous flowing belts. I am using balancers to kind of load them in. This makes a constant stream of bioflux all the time, mainly for export for novice, but honestly, this could be further reduced. You're finally seeing the first alarm indicator saying that we have run out of Gleba science. So we're going to finally see the freshness numbers start to increase as the system starts warming up. I have some fallback logic here that's like, hey, if I run out of seeds, go and upcycle seeds and create them. It'll prioritize the output to that, and will then just recycle and only produce seeds. So that's a fallback mechanism. Otherwise, export. There's probably a more UPS efficient way to do this. This is an early design I came up with, and I've just kept it. This is for producing carbon fiber, 240 per second per lane, and produces them and exports them into rocket silos. The rest is just iron, copper. Basically just using the copper bacteria cultivation process, feeding them into chests. A little bit of calcite, again, coming from the freight ship. And that's enough to make all the rocket parts that you need. The rocket parts are all fed into basically just this is all just bot driven. I did not feel like going and making it more complicated. This feeds directly into lanes. I have those lanes directly feeding and inserting into the rocket silos. And the reason mainly is these are running 100% all the time in nonstop when you're running and creating this science here. You'll also have noticed that the entire time throughout this video, I didn't have alarms on Gleba, even though I'm constantly producing eggs and storing them. That's because there's a logic condition here that basically says, hey, if we haven't launched within the last 5 minutes, and there hasn't been a request from space specifically, because you can monitor the orbital requests for basically this agriculture science, to basically go tell all the recipes here to disable so that all the eggs go into the dump chests, and it enables this transport belt here to allow basically the eggs to go back onto this main dump line, or basically garbage line, and then they all get recycled, destroyed, burned, and effectively then at that point, once they're completely destroyed, then it will lock everything down again after 2 minutes, or I think it's 1 minute, if I'm correct on that. Either way, implementation detail does not matter quite as much. And then there's a little purge timer here that just says, hey, the time since it was last purged or launched. Right now you're seeing we have continuous requests, so this is all paused. It's not going to run right now. There's a flow-based design here. This is going to constantly flow through, create 240 per second per little lane here. We have a trickle of constant nutrients. Each one of these kind of pass nutrients to the next one, the next one, the next one. And this actually produces way faster than that rule that I was saying before. So this produces 90 per second. Why did I choose this? It's because I'm on demand building a rocket silo. So we'll use this one as an example. Right now, the animation time, the amount of time that it takes to actually load the rocket out, was the metric that I was going by. I wanted this to be able to, exactly by the time this animation is done, have it fully loaded so it can launch again. So in order to do that, I needed to produce effectively about 90K per second or so. And so these were designed specifically so that when you're trying to launch, and now we're seeing that freshness numbers start to increase again as we're getting fresh materials back in, it will go and produce immediately at that point. It'll go and create the eggs on demand. It will create the in the biochambers agriculture science packs on demand, and we'll have just enough and just fast enough, like basically using the industrial manufacturing term just-in-time management, to generate just enough agriculture science packs in a spike to fill a rocket silo, instead of continuously creating it. So that's also where you're going to see this kind of organic pattern of rockets not all launching at once, but kind of launching at different timings and rates. And so you have these, so that's kind of the overall. The end of the line is just an upcycler to make legendary. I have nothing better to do with the seeds. You could power the entire place. Not worth it. That's all I need for power. This produces no, this is not an indicator. It produces enough power. Let's just say that. It can make up to 6 gigawatts of power. So this here, and if we look at now, basically this was completely dormant. Just for the times when things completely run on novice, it'll kind of spike up. But yeah, so we look at science. This is making 260,000 per minute, which if you bumped up slightly more, we could be running at 4.4 million. And this comes to the point of the base of why I call this a 4 million SPM base. Because once this finally stabilizes and gets out of its dormant period, it takes about 10 minutes or so. It'll cap out and run exactly at 4 million science, and you'll see eventually this start to saturate here. And then we'll just be running exactly at 4 million. We'll wait a little bit to get to that point. It's slowly ramping up as the freshness values increase and all the old stuff gets destroyed on novice. Otherwise, yeah. Back to, again, this was a death world, so I have these outposts here that a train will conditionally bring things out, will deliver all materials to resupply and rebuild the base in case anything gets damaged. So there's requests that monitors of any of the items specifically that I would like to have here. Where is that bad boy? There. So this is the outpost supplies. This is what I want here. There's a couple different utility trains that just take a generic assembly of components. They monitor all the stuff that's here. If anything is less than the desired value, train comes out and delivers it. It's only when something gets destroyed or it needs more repair packs. Otherwise, these act as basically an effective isolated bot network. They just come here, fix everything up, and they destroy things. It's enough range to cover. This is probably something I should do in Novice, but it's enough to cover basically the entire pollution cloud here. So I never have to worry about Gleba at all anymore. Other than that, last things to talk about. I've kept this around. This was a design that was done early on, just to supply materials to all the different planets. It makes every single material that you would ever need. Mainly, this is just to supply rocket parts to Aquillo. I just like this ship. It's a fun ship. It's not UPS efficient at all. It could be way better. I just like having something that's still using nuclear. Some kind of a ship that's still doing that. And this is basically the ship that just supplies parts and just flies around to all the different planets. It'll pick up a little bit of stone, occasionally some belts, just because I use belts all the time. But then, yeah, it just produces every single material that you could possibly need. Does fluid processing in space, so with coal, so that you can produce everything else that you'd want, blue circuits, etc. So it's not UPS efficient, and the reason being because these are pretty much active all the time, these inserters. Because they used to be, and they used to be until I stopped the belt from going all the way around. That's a pro tip as well. The moment that these belts have a full loop like this does, the inserters are always active then the moment there's a continuously flowing belt loop. The moment that they stop, they can actually stop circulating rather in one big loop. You'll see a lot of designs like that. The inserters can stop moving. So that's a nice way just to have a tiny UPS optimization. The reason that this ship is not UPS optimized is because just the number of... the number of asteroid collectors that are on this on the ship. So, and just this sheer size of it, and you can easily make these ships on other planets and then just ship them up and just have everything on the freight ship. So eventually, that'd be the right way to go about it. And decommissioning these. Again, sentimental. I don't like deleting things. So there's some things that I could kill, but I feel like nominally getting 60 FPS almost consistently. Again, I'm not claiming that I'm 60 FPS all the time. It's it definitely is right on the border. But, and here we're going to get to finally the point where I can showcase us averaging out at 4 million on average, basically, on science production. So now that we're getting to the freshness levels that we want, we're consuming everything. We're now consuming the full production value. So you're seeing here, we're making 270, 260. Let's start looking at that. Once this irons out to get to a point where we're stable again, we'll have this science at 4 million. So just testing wise, the last time that I was running agriculture science, if you want to see another chart of that, you see kind of, find a good indicator of it being actually actively used. Yeah, there you go. So you could see when, this was back when I was fully optimizing it, this 4.3 million, that's kind of the number that you're going to see on average of what you're using when you're actually burning through 260,000 at full freshness. So this 4.2, 4.3 mil, we're not quite at the full amount, but we're as close as I can get it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And that's finally ultimately the conclusion of why I'm calling this a 4 million SPM base. Finally, I haven't touched on Promethium. Like I said, these ships, and we can show it. I can show the process. And so this basically this upcycling process is what you're using agriculture science. Let's go ahead and run research productivity. Running research productivity, you're going to jump down and get immediately down to basically the 2 million mark. It's half the speed. I have not added extra labs. You don't have the production value to do it. I don't find it useful to run research productivity any faster than that. If you want to call this base a true 2.2 million SPM base, fine. I will accept that. I don't define it that way. I define it as the research that's actually effectively useful. I don't find research productivity all that helpful, especially since it's not fun to optimize ships that there's just diminishing return and you're just never going to create a truly optimal, basically, what was I going to say? Promethium hauler or Promethium runner like this. Just the rockets are just too expensive. So you'll see here now we're going to be running at 2.2 mil SPM, or ESPM rather, effective science per minute. Taking a drink of water. So everything's slowed down. This is, again, I kind of love this hexa pattern of 6 different locations where they're all dumping into. Just looks like a core processing unit or something, and it's I enjoy this pattern a lot. I don't know why, but it really I enjoy it. Realize while I'm here, I just straight up upcycle to create legendary productivity models. I have an absurd bank of them. They're just here in case I ever want to eventually switch over this gigantic setup over into legendary versions of captive biter spawners. You can do it at some point. There's some UPS savings there. I just haven't dealt with this project. So let's show how this works. Let's show one of the mining actual ships in action. We're going to go ahead and override and say, let's go ahead and launch. So we're going to force a launch. And just because it's beautiful, let's go into the editor. And, oh yeah, that mod disables the amount you can zoom out. It launches all the rockets at once. So, it's just a beautiful launching sequence. Alright, let's disable the force launch. Huge swarm of robots fly around. And they deliver all the rocket parts that you need. This is definitely going to trigger now one of these trains to bring a new supply of fresh processing units, etc. to here. Trains come back. It's an isolated network so that the bots can just deliver the things that it needs to. There's a separate just excess burning unit here that destroys eggs when needed. Because there's a slight overshoot. And then finally, yeah, all the materials continue to get brought in here with trains, and this is just its own little biter island network all on its own. So Mark II just got, or Mark III rather, just got the delivery, and it has all the biter eggs on board. Typically, when I'm actually running research productivity, when I finally run out of the 5 million science cap, that takes like 20-30 minutes for that to happen. At that point, my strategy has been I'm using this mod only to enable an auto queue mining productivity. Again, I'm not going to sit around forever on this. Let mine productivity run. And so I'm still researching something that's useful. And then I let these ships just go and fly out. You'll see here it's running at its top speed of 745 kilometers per second. To get to the Shattered Planet. When it goes to Aquillo, the one thing it's going to do is immediately drop off its crude oil barrel. And then it's going to continue on its journey to go to the solar system edge. So let's follow that along its path. That's going to drop down now. Go into the cargo landing pad. Wait for that for a second. Here you can see it along its path. It's going to come in, get quickly inserted, and instantly launched. And it's going to have its handoff now, and this is going to go over to Mark II. It's now getting it. It's waiting for its crude oil barrel to be received. The moment that's received, it's going to then immediately launch and go to Novice. And we'll wait until the next signal comes from the control board here to send more eggs back up. So yeah, so this is now going to fly back. Each one of these, on average, bring back about 750,000 Promethium. So to get back to the 5 million cap, right? That would be, let's see, 750, 1.5K, 3 million would be 4 trips. So you're talking basically like 5, 6 trips to get back and completely stop. So it's about like a 2-hour long journey that they go and do. During that time, I just run research productivity and let these run and go out to the Shattered Planet. The ship that's currently going out there, let's monitor this. Let's talk a little bit about the timer that I mentioned earlier. There's a calculator on here that is estimating the amount of time remaining before the eggs spoil in minutes. Just rounded them to minutes for convenience. I don't need higher granularity than that. It's a good enough guess in terms of what it's going to use. So this is right now at, it's saying I've got 25 minutes basically left before I'm actually going to have like of how much the estimated freshness there is. The skull symbol means that's how long it would take to fully, it would take about 17 minutes to fully dump all of the eggs out. So the logic is really simple here. It just says like, hey, if effectively at any time, the amount of time that it's going to take to dump everything is greater than or equal to the amount of time or of how fresh the eggs are in terms of spoilage rate, just start dumping things. And a little indicator shows up that it's happening. It happens occasionally, but the concept there is just, this is estimating this. It's roughly accurate. This is saying about 24 minutes of freshness on here. It's about 25 minutes, so it's slightly overestimating and overshooting it, but that's fine. Just better be safe than sorry with the biter eggs. So this is now flying out here. This is not very UPS efficient to look at, especially the further that you get out. Again, this mod that I have is deleting the actual explosions and number of particles that are generated from explosions, just because it's unbearable. I can't talk enough about how much it annoys me and how much I wish that the UPS could be more optimized for Promethium ships, but alas, this is kind of where we're at. So this ship is now continuously flying out 720 kilometers per second, and will start to ramp up slowly on the science that it's creating. To keep this video is already incredibly long, to keep it relatively short, I'm not going to showcase that. I will show you brief periods of what it would do. So it caps out at 34,000 per minute, kind of follows this pattern. Global statistics, it kind of cuts down the low pattern by the other one running, and on average it'll make between 50 and 15,000, so 30,000 a minute is what it winds up actually averaging over time. So you can see the further and further it gets out towards the Shattered Planet, this is going to ramp up, and eventually it's going to get to the mark where it's at 300,000 kilometers. That'll take about another 10-12 minutes to get out there, but when it gets out there, then it'll be at its quote saturation point, in which case it will slow down to, and it's this indicator here that says it's at full speed. It'll then tell us that it's at reduced speed, later throttled speed, and then we'll run that for the rest of the journey. The other ship is going to have to wait anyway, 12 minutes. Again, 12 minutes is kind of that mark of how far it needs to go out to kind of get to this mark and at this time, to get to the 300,000 kilometer mark. Then it goes and triggers launch on Novice. It will then execute, and you'll see here time since last launch was 6 minutes and 20 something seconds. So this now has to wait until 12 minutes have passed for the next rocket launch anyway. So even if we exceed the Promethium Science Pack limit that we actually have here, or like we technically have not enough, it'll still wait that time, and that's just for UPS reasons. So this is actually the most efficient process because mining productivity is very cheap to run in terms of UPS, so that's why I choose it. So this runs at 60 FPS UPS. As both the ships are running out, fly back and forth, I wait until the point where my science monitor says that we're at 100% again and the ships have stopped. I switch to research productivity, let the buffer run out, and then go back to mining prod. It still makes sense, and I'd like to eventually get to mining productivity 10K. just mainly for sustainability reasons and stability of just having them not run out. So that's basically the goals. And so at some point, sure, why not? Let's go do some research productivity in between for periods. That concludes what I wanted to show for the base. There's a lot of little small details that I haven't gone into, and maybe I'll do some full in-depth reviews. We'll see if there's any traction, any interests on the different designs and a little bit more an in-depth cover of it. But like I said, linked in the description of this video, there's going to be a uploaded save file if you want to try it out. And yeah, that is my tour of a uncommon first Megabase that I've designed. Been designing over the last 3 months. It's been a really fun challenge, and let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've made it this far in the video, wow, hats off to you. I don't have the attention span to watch this long of a video, so I appreciate the saints that have made it this far. Any debates, discussions, comments below. Thank you very much.